COD Next just wrapped, and it was dull. Like, painfully dull. I don't really like doing negative videos, so this will hopefully be my last one on Call of Duty, at least until it launches in November. But I wanted to air my complaints a little bit, because I think it's an interesting situation that Activision would feel comfortable even putting on a show like this with what they had to offer. Hopefully this video won't be too long. I would say you could go watch the VOD for my 4-hour stream of the event and all my thoughts there, but Activision decided to put licensed music in the event, not tell us when it would be, even though they asked us to do a watch party for it, and told us to make sure our VODs weren't saved so we didn't get in copyright trouble. You know, instead of just providing a DMCA safe version of the stream like other publishers do, or just telling us when to mute. Honestly, this whole thing was a shambles. The presentation went through multiplayer zombies and then Warzone, so let's do things in the same order. First of all, multiplayer. Weirdly, during the presentation, they did show us some gameplay from the hundreds of creators invited to the event, but mostly they showed the same like 6 or 7, a few of which had turned their graphic settings way down to low and had their frame counter on a stream to show that they were getting like 240 frames a second, because of course when you're showcasing a game, you really want to show it at its absolute ugliest, while some of the best players in the world are sweating to show off to each other. The game was completely undecipherable to watch. I guess because they had already had a chance to play it before the show, a lot of creators had decided what the meta guns were, so we saw loads of the same weapons over and over again, loads of the same slidey movement you're used to from modern Call of Duty, and it ended up being so fast that some of my viewers were saying that it was just making them feel sick to watch. So in terms of features, there's the new wall bouncing, and for some reason it doesn't include wall running, even though it absolutely looks like it would naturally fit. So now instead of like a graceful flow around the maps like you had in the jetpack Call of Duties or games like Titanfall, you have a weird like pinging off the walls that sent plenty of players to their death down pits. I'm guessing they wanted to say that this clearly isn't a jetpack COD because there's no wall running, to make sure people weren't drawing those comparisons, but I honestly think that would have been better. The guns they showed off all looked incredibly generic. There's a few new functions, like a shotgun that has a charged, more accurate blast, which I'm sure will be nerfed into the ground at release, like every long-range shotgun they've ever done, but it was pretty much like, oh, there's an assault rifle, there's an SMG, there's a DMR, there's a shotgun, and they were all super accurate, high rate of fire, incredibly boring. They had no personality or character or originality, and that's one of the main opportunities afforded by setting a game like this in the future, that you can do crazy things with weapons, and they just didn't. The maps all look the same as each other. They've gone in hard on the 3-lane structure. They've talked about it a lot in the marketing. So every single map just looked like it had a sort of flat route on one side, a jumpy route on the other, and then a slightly more complex interior in the middle with some sort of moving feature like a rotating wall. There was a lot of maps that had a rotating bit for some reason. I think in every map they showed off, a different viewer would swear blind that it was a remake from some other previous Call of Duty. And it's not that the viewers were exactly, I mean, they were wrong, but it's not that they were being dumb or anything. It's that there wasn't any originality or creativity on display. All of these maps just looked like things we've had before. The whole multiplayer mode looks so incredibly bland. There were wide open corridors everywhere, grey walls, and a blue filter over absolutely everything. It weirdly reminded me of Battlefield 2042 interiors, and that is definitely not a compliment. To their credit, so I'm not completely negative, I did think Black Ops 7 looked different to Black Ops 6, and that's something I always hope for. It's just a shame that it looks worse than Black Ops 6. Visually, design-wise, and the gameplay, it all looked incredibly generic and like the type of Call of Duty that I'm just not interested in. You know, they really want to focus. Look how fast you can move. Look how these guns don't have any recoil. Look how fast the time to kill is. Everyone had ugly health bars over them so you could see who was weak to prioritize your shots better. It was like they were just pushing further and further away from making something that's immersive and what to me is fun, and instead pushing towards something just being as hyper competitive as possible. Maybe it's partly because they just kept showing movement players skating around instead of showing normal players playing the game, but it completely left me cold. Right, on to zombies. The zombies presentation was odd. They invited all these players there, a lot of them were mostly zombies players, and they barely showed any footage of them doing anything in zombies. Obviously, you could watch the individual players' streams if you wanted to get more footage and stuff like that, but on the main stream, they barely showed any at all. Instead, they spent all their time doing interviews, talking about stuff they'd already talked about in the blog posts. As far as I could tell, the creators were allowed to play on the full large map, just with the main quest disabled, but most of the footage they showed was just of them getting the car set up at the beginning, driving it around a little bit and getting blown up, and then shooting zombies in a barn. As a zombies fan and someone who has enjoyed quite a lot of Black Ops 6 zombies, I thought this looked awful. I've seen the compliments that some players have had for the atmosphere, and it definitely looks like a little bit more gothic and dark than Black Ops 6 did, but there's still so many wide open spaces, bright glowing weapons, super generic looking monsters, and a traversal area that's called the fog, but it looks incredibly not foggy, like you could see perfectly well. My memory of transit might be hazy, it's been a long while, but I remember the fog being thick and confusing like in real life. This was more like a slight morning mist. The big new feature, the Wonder Vehicle, was disappointingly just like any other vehicle from Warzone. The handling looked super floaty and light, it didn't have any weight to it, it didn't interact with anything other than like small fences. The gameplay when the people were driving it had no real tension to it. I was expecting it to be like a real centerpiece of the mode and something new and be way more immersive, like maybe being tied to first person and you'd be like trying to plow through zombies while you're struggling to see through the fog, building up momentum and inertia and speed and barely holding on to control as you like slid around corners. Instead, you're just pootling about like we did in Modern Warfare Zombies or Outbreak. It really did look a lot like Outbreak. I did like the environmental storytelling in the barn. There's like skeletons of a family and it's like, oh, I wonder what happened here. I hope there's a lot more stuff like that with depth and stories to uncover. But the gameplay just looked like Black Ops 6 in an Outbreak map. And that really doesn't do anything for me. I didn't come away from that being like, oh, I can't wait to explore that map at all. It also kind of rubbed me up the wrong way when they were touting, there's going to be 3 new zombies maps in Season 1, and then they explained it's 1 new round-based map and 2 survival maps. So the survival maps are just gated off sections of the main map. Like, that's surely not a new map. If you say there's going to be 3 zombies maps in Season 1, that could be like, oh, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be like, you know, the beginning of Black Ops 4 where we had loads of maps. But no, we're going to get the same kind of map cadence as we had in Black Ops 6. Of course, I'll play zombies in the beta and at launch, and I'm sure it'll be fun for a couple of hours of mindless fun, but they've done so little to improve the mode, I can't imagine spending loads of time in it again. And then finally onto Warzone. I didn't know that we were getting anything really in Warzone. They did say that people were going to play Warzone at COD Next, but I didn't know what they were going to be announcing, so we hadn't heard any of this before. So at least it was all new to us. In Warzone, we get a new Resurgence map, which is based on Liberty Falls and Shattered Vale. It's made by High Moon Studios, who are my favourite Warzone developers. They made Fortune's Keep and Ashika Island, and they love doing Easter eggs, which is great. And they have a couple of new POIs in Verdansk that I think Beanox did, maybe. The new map, the Resurgence map, looks fine. In the preview, it actually looked really cool. It was like bright and vibrant. Then as soon as they dropped into gameplay, it was just back to the old greenish yellow tint that we've had on so many Warzone maps, like Caldera and Urzikstan especially. Apparently it's in the name of making players easy to spot, but it's so ugly. And within a few minutes of watching gameplay, I was already bored of it because it just looked like more Warzone. I get a little kick out of seeing, you know, people playing Warzone in areas that I know well from the Liberty Falls map, but that's about it. You know, it's just a little bit of like, hey, I recognize that place. I've played in that place a lot. This is a new context for it, but that's kind of it. I'm sure High Moon will have put some great Easter eggs in, and I'll have fun exploring those. But the reason I stopped playing Warzone isn't because I needed new maps. It's because I'm so burned out on the core game, and that isn't really changing. They're doing some tweaks, like they're reducing attachments to 5, which I think is a good move, and they're getting rid of tactical sprint, and I'm all for simplifying Warzone a little bit, but those kind of updates feel a bit more like a seasonal update rather than a brand new chapter of Warzone. The new Verdansk POIs are barely worth mentioning. There's a research base that looks just like the buildings at Dam, but seems to give you a heat map showing you where the most enemies are. And there's a return for the factory from Verdansk 84, which nearly everyone who was watching my stream had forgotten even existed. right at the end of COD Next, there was a teaser of something that made me feel at least a little bit vindicated, that they showed that shot of the teaser where there's a team wingsuiting into Avalon, and 3 months ago I did a video all about that saying, hey, this definitely looks like Blackout's returning, and then they came out and said, nope, it's co-op campaign, and a bunch of people in the comments were like, haha, you're wrong, like it's obviously co-op campaign. And now it turns out they've turned around and said, actually, we were lying, actually is also Blackout 2 returning, or a new version of Blackout returning sometime next year in the spring. They're doing a sort of Blackout thing alongside Warzone. Details are scarce right now. I'm hoping that it'll be a mode with no loadouts where you have to grab weapons and attachments and limited time perks off the floor, like in Blackout. Especially, it'll be great if they take that as well as the best bits of Warzone, like contracts and buybacks and the Gulag. I've got no idea why they're going to carry on running it alongside normal Warzone. I think it'd be much better to do either or. Warzone's already clearly demonstrated that they struggle with player counts when they add new modes, like they added the casuals mode and then people were complaining about long queues and solos and stuff. But anyway, apparently they're going to run both on at the same time. Who knows what they're even trying to do anymore. To me, COD Next took my hype for Black Ops 7 from probably about a 5 out of 10 down to like a 3 out of 10. Of course, I'll play it and probably have some fun for a week or two, but I honestly can't imagine thinking of myself as a Call of Duty creator if that's what we've got to look forward to next year. Thank God for Battlefield. So let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like, dislike if you didn't, and subscribe to see more content, especially more Battlefield content. I will also, of course, be streaming the Call of Duty beta across this weekend. See you for the next one. Goodbye.